Carl Higbie, former Navy SEAL, presidential appointee, and now host of Liberty and Cocktails podcast on our show. Carl Higbie. Hey, Carl, great to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, John.
All right, let's go right to this. We're on this Chris Collins thing today, Carl. I just want to get your take of this. I mean, I know guilty until proven innocent, but the FBI says he took this call from the CEO of this drug company in Australia who said, look, my drug did not pass, it failed. And
Right.
They didn't make it public for 5 days. When they did make it public, as expected, stock loses 93% of its value. Collins picks up the phone.
Didn't they make out with like $750,000 or something like that?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that is, I get the principle of innocent until proven guilty is one of the fundamental bedrocks of our judicial system here. However, it's the perception of a leader of the, one of the many leaders of the free world, I should say representatives of, because I don't really think that most people in Congress are actual leaders. And that we have people indicted by the public all the time. And look, I understand he was arrested. I understand that the FBI has a strong case against him. But also in that judicial bedrock is the right to a speedy and fair trial. Let's say, given the benefit of the doubt, which I'm not doing, but let's say, devil's advocate, this is a huge mistake. Everything was wrong. Now he's stepped down. He's been dragged through the mud in the media. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not defending him. But I want a fair trial, a speedy and fair trial for him before people start stepping down. The reason is because look at what happened with Alex Jones. He was basically indicted by the public as a conspiracy theorist. I don't care for Alex Jones. There's no secret. I don't support him. I think most of the stuff he says is completely out in left field. However, that the censorship by the left and the censorship by the public cannot determine people's careers. I just don't think that, especially in legal circumstances, the guy may be guilty as a fox, but I want to see a fair trial on him before he starts stepping down.
I can see what you're saying, but also, Carl, there's a responsibility here to the party and to the president. And because of these allegations, his seat is now at risk, right? But what we do know is he did call his son. I mean, he's not disputing that. And we do know that the CEO of this drug company did email him. Nobody's disputing that. And he did call his son on his cell phone and tip him off, and nobody's disputing that. So these are, violations of the public trust. And, and I just, I think differently because I'm not vested in this thing, and I have more important things in my life than to run around with a congressman's button on or a badge or whatever they have, a lapel thing, and, they get all the attention. I've got other things going on that fulfill me. But, I mean, I would just say, look, I'm going to fight this, but I don't want it to tarnish the district because I don't know how this guy gets reelected after this. I mean, it's 90 days, and even if he gets – I don't even know how he gets exonerated. But, look, that's another thing. So let's go forward. I wanted to get your take today, Carl, on this. I haven't covered it yet, so you can introduce the topic. But what is the deal with this terror camp in New Mexico? What is the deal here?
Jesus, yeah.
Explain this.
So the guy who ran this terrorist camp, there's, 11 kids or something in this terrorist camp training to execute school shootings. So the father of the guy leading the terror camp is an unindicted co-conspirator of the 1993 World Trade Center problem. So the guy, he's a radical imam out of New York, completely radical imam, like well known. His son goes out, kidnaps his own son, and then brings in all these other kids that they're living in post-earthquake Haiti style accommodations, training to shoot up schools. The kids were like anywhere between 3 and 15 years old. I mean, this is ludicrous. And we as a public need to start looking at this. There are two sides to Islam. There's a large percentage that is perfectly happy to live and accommodate to our Western values, and there's a percentage of 10 to 15% that is not. And we need to divide that somehow and have our legislators need to perform some sort of litmus test that says, okay, radical Islam is no longer protected as a religious liberty because it's a political ideological movement. And it's scary. And to the other 90 or 85 to 90% of the Muslim population, you need to speak out against this, and you need to, alert people when you see things like this, because he can't be the only person that knew about this, the father. I'm sure there were other people that practiced with this guy that are moderate Muslims, good people, but they probably knew about it and looked the other way, because that's what often happens.
I mean, so he had these 11 children that were living in squalor, basically, that they were training to be terrorists and go into schools and shoot students, right? Yeah. So it was part training, part brainwash, part starvation, part abuse, part everything bad. And, when I read about this, Carl, I really wanted to have you on. But one of the questions I had is, okay, is this an isolated thing with just some crazy people? Or are there others of these out there? Because obviously they wanted to do this in order to wreak havoc, cause harm, right? I mean, that's the whole object of this.
Yeah, these camps, this is not like an isolated incident. We've found these before. We've found similar things like this all across the country. And every time we find them, we're like, oh, this is so tragic, this is so horrible. We need to do a lot more to be on the lookout for these things. This is basic. The left wing rails against a bunch of Republicans on a ranch shooting guns and calls us a militia just because a couple of guys own a ranch and like to go up there and shoot together. Yet we have this guy. There is zero shot that other people did not know about this camp. 0% chance, give or take. And we need to start being much more diligent about this stuff, because all it takes is one of those kids, one, to go into a school and shoot it up and create another Sandy Hook incident. And I'm not willing to accept that.
And to think this was only found out because what started out, I think, as I recall, as a search for a young child taken by his non-custodial father in Atlanta, Georgia, is what led authorities to even finding this place. Now, we understand that some of the documents obtained by Fox 5 in Georgia give a better outline of the timeline, but this has been going on for some time, and they were abducting children and turning them into brainwashed terrorists. I mean, think about this.
Yeah.
Right?
In the name of Islam.
In the name of something. Whatever it is, it's bad. And my first reaction to this, Carl, is, is this an isolated incident of crazy people that just happen to be doing this? Or, is this the new normal? Are there 5 of these, or 10, or 3, or 50? No one knows.
I would lean more towards the 50 number, and because we continue to find them, and it always is something that tips them off. Something, incredible. It's the Al Capone, it's the tax fraud, or something like that's how we find these things. But the problem is again, this is. I will say that the 10 to 15% of the Islamic community is radicalized. These are not my numbers; these are State Department numbers. And you keep in mind, that's a huge number of people. All it takes is one to do a lot of damage. So what we need to do is we need to start being much more diligent upon policing radical Islam. I know the left is going to listen to this and say, oh, Carl's at it again, Islamic theories. No, radical Islam. People who preach hate and preach any type of deception and perversion of the Muslim religion, which generally is peaceful. Anybody who preaches hate in the name of that religion, you need to come down on them with a ton of bricks.
You read this story, and you read these other stories about crazy parents that locked their 8 kids up in the basement or the attic and something, half starved them to death, and gave them a peanut butter sandwich a week and all this horrible stuff. But this is a little different, because here these kids, there was a guy there that was actually training them with guns. The guns were there. This is all documented now. Training and brainwashing these children to then, when they were able, to go in and shoot up schools.
Right.
And
that's our vulnerability.
And it's right here in the United States. And it was under. This is the thing that you brought out. How do you hide this, right? This was a compound in New Mexico, but trucks go in and out, cars go in and out. They have to bring in food for themselves. They go in and out. How is this hidden? How did nobody ask a question, Carl?
Well, the whole see something, say something thing. For instance, I have a friend who was in New York who saw somebody walk by Grand Central, put down a bag, and walk away. So he went and told a cop. And they said, oh, no, we see that all the time. People are desensitized. Now, was that a dry run or just an idiot leaving his backpack there?
Right.
Who knows? But, thank God it was nothing. But the fact of the matter is we've become, and in this society specifically, in today's world, we've become so politically correct. There's such division that people, honestly, they're afraid to say something because they don't want to be labeled. Even with the hint or the idea, hey, what is this guy doing? Why does he keep going every week and getting the same number of supplies and buying all these guns and doing all this stuff? Look, it raises questions. So the question should be answered.
I agree with you. I mean, I think, and you're right, too, there's a reluctance now for anybody to even come forward and say anything because of the fear of being branded as somehow politically incorrect. I want to thank Carl Higbie for being with us today. Carl Higbie. Now, his Liberty and Cocktails podcast, you can go to libertyandcocktails.com, Liberty and Cocktails with Carl Higbie. It's once a week. We carry it on our show on Sunday. Liberty and Cocktails with Carl Higbie. Who do you have on this week, Carl?
So we had Bernie Carrick on yesterday. We have Diamond and Silk coming up today.
All right, Diamond and Silk coming up today. Libertyandcocktails.com. Hey, Carl, thanks for that analysis. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.